Buying a home is one of the most exciting milestones in life. However, it's also one of the biggest financial decisions that you're ever going to make. And while the process is quite similar throughout the nation, buying a home in Dallas, Texas does come with its own unique challenges. And because it can get a little bit complicated and overwhelming at times, a lot of people make very similar mistakes,
including some that first-time homebuyers tend to overlook. From hidden costs to navigating property taxes in Texas, underestimating closing costs, and dealing with the effects of Texas soil on foundation. We're going to pretty much cover it all, so stick around because number 6 on the list might actually cost you thousands. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Alex Z. I've been helping people buy and sell real estate here in Dallas for the last few years or so, and I've been living here my whole life. Because of that, I think it's just an opinion, but I believe that I have pretty decent experience when it comes to knowing the ins and outs of Dallas, including the good, the bad, and frustrating parts. And so in this video, my goal is to first of all help you navigate people throughout the city, understand the different suburbs that we have here, and providing the best home buying and selling tips that I can. So I don't have any offers or anything like that, but if there is anything that I can help out with, if you have any questions from this video or any other videos that I have out there, feel free to reach out. And let's dive right into some of the biggest mistakes a lot of home buyers make here in Texas. So the first common mistake I have in my list is skipping getting a mortgage pre-approval. A lot of markets are experiencing a bit of a slower market right now due to the holidays, high interest rates, economic uncertainty, and just a lot of other things. Certain markets here within the Dallas Metroplex are still experiencing somewhat hot markets. As a matter of fact, I've even seen some neighborhoods have an average days of market less than even 30 days. So having a pre-approval, I'd say, is pretty essential. A lot of sellers expect buyers to come prepared, and without a pre-approval, your offer probably won't be taken seriously. And another key thing about getting pre-approved is that it truly gives you a clear understanding of your budget, and so I definitely wouldn't recommend skipping this. And so this is probably one of the first steps that I recommend for anyone who's thinking about buying soon, unless of course you have the cash for it. The second common mistake actually surprises quite a lot of people, especially first-time home buyers and even some people who are looking to relocate to Dallas or to Texas. While Texas doesn't have an income tax, we do have property taxes, and property taxes can be quite expensive here in Dallas, Texas. In Dallas County, for example, property taxes can range from about 2% to 2.5% of your home's value annually. So for a $300,000 home, that's anywhere between $6,000 to $7,000 a year on top of your mortgage payment. So my recommendation would be to always factor property taxes into your monthly budget. However, as I've mentioned, a lot of times this payment is bundled in with your monthly mortgage. So once again, when you get pre-approved, a great lender is going to walk you through the exact amount that you can afford, and they're most likely going to include insurance and your property taxes in those payments, or at least in the estimate. The third common mistake that I see some home buyers make is shortening their due diligence period. So real quickly, I'll explain what this is in case some of you don't know. So your due diligence period, otherwise known as your option period, is typically anywhere between 5 to 14 days after you've gone under contract, during which you'll be able to perform your due diligence, meaning you'll be able to perform home inspections. This can be as thorough as you want. As a buyer, you'd have to pay for this, but it's really important to look at this as an investment. During this time, if you uncover anything that's really serious and the homeowner isn't really willing to negotiate too much, or let's just say, for example, you just don't want to buy this house anymore, you'd be able to back out of the contract, keep your earnest money real quickly. It's just the amount of money that you put up front to show home sellers that you're a serious buyer that is typically given back to you, or at least applied to your closing costs. And so you keep this money that's put in escrow with the title company if you were to back out during that option period. You do have a few other opportunities during which this money will be protected, but I just wanted to quickly explain what the option period or the due diligence period actually is. So once again, the common mistake I see people making is shortening the amount of the days in which they're going to do this. The reason a lot of people do this is in situations where you have multiple offers that you're beating with. Doing this causes your offer to be a little bit more competitive. Dallas homes are often built on shifting soil. We have soil that's highly alkaline, meaning that it does tend to shift a little bit. And obviously this can lead to foundation issues. So the reason I recommend not shortening this period too much, even though it's tempting, is so that you can truly have enough time, first of all, to schedule inspections, have your inspection completed, even though it only takes sometimes 24 hours or less to get your inspection report back. You really want to make sure that you're able to look through it thoroughly, and then you have time to talk to your agent about it, perform more inspections if you wanted to, or try to renegotiate with the seller if need be. And the fourth mistake I see happen quite frequently is ignoring flood zones. Like in many regions throughout the nation, some areas can be a little prone to flooding. I'm not saying all of Dallas, but some areas can be, even if they don't look like it. So while it might be a little bit of an annoying task, I do definitely recommend checking FEMA's flood map, especially if you have any concerns about if a property is in a flood zone. You're going to need flood insurance, which can add thousands of dollars annually to your costs. I've seen some people go under contract without having checked FEMA's flood map. In some of these cases, right before closing, after a lender was going through their underwriting, through the buyer's application, turned out that the buyer was in a flood zone. And because of this, it turned out the buyer couldn't qualify for the property because it was adding a lot more money to their annual fees or their annual costs, and they just couldn't afford it anymore. So don't skip out on checking that map. Now, the fifth common mistake that I see happen is forgetting about HOA fees and some of the regulations. A lot of neighborhoods within the Dallas area do have HOAs, especially those near new communities. While HOAs can enhance communities by making sure that they're clean, presentable, well maintained, they can also come with some rules and fees and some nightmares every now and then, but we can talk about that in a different video. But it's important to note that some HOAs can restrict certain things about what you can and can't do. For example, they have some weird restrictions on what color your house can be, how long your grass can be, whether or not a tree can be planted in a certain area. Some HOA communities even have some people surveilling properties on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. That might be a little bit of an over-exaggeration. And others have really high maintenance fees for their pools and some of the landscaping that they offer. So once again, don't be too scared of HOAs, but I always recommend making sure that you review those HOA documents before you close on a property. Sometimes even before you go under contract, if you can get your hands on them. Number 6 on the list would be not considering your resale value. Now, even if you're planning to stay in your property long term, it's my opinion that real estate values still matters. Buyers can sometimes overlook certain factors, for example, school ratings, future development, or highway expansion projects that can have an impact on the home's value. For example, some neighborhoods with really good school ratings can really hold their value, if not see better appreciation than others over time. So I would just recommend thinking ahead. While I wouldn't want to go overboard with this or recommend going crazy about this, especially if you know yourself and you know that you already think like this or you're already very focused on the future, I would still recommend that you at least think a little bit ahead. I'm sure your future self would thank you. And number 7 would be underestimating closing costs. Closing costs are a very significant expense. While with some new home builders, especially right now, you can find really great opportunities with incentives. In Dallas, I've seen them range between 2 to 5% of the home's purchase price. And this will include things like title insurance, appraisal fees, loan origination charges, and your inspections. So for a $300,000 home, that's going to be anywhere between $6,000 to $15,000. And this isn't including the down payment, which can be as low as 3%, depending on what kind of loan you're using, go up to about 20%. Now I'm going to touch on the pre-approval again, because the best way to get an understanding of how much or how low you're able to put down for your closing costs and for your down payment would be by getting pre-approved. This is why I always recommend it as a first step, but we'll touch on that on a different video. And the 8th common mistake I see happen is forgetting about your utility costs. I've touched on this in other videos, but Texas summers are hot. And that means if you don't want to suffer, you're probably going to have high electricity bills around the summer. So if you're buying a home, I would definitely recommend asking the sellers for past utility bills. That way you can get a better understanding of what your monthly costs might look like, especially if the home is older or less energy efficient. If you can get a glance of their utility bills or their AC, their electricity, their water, gas, I mean, whatever you can get your hands on is definitely going to help you get prepared. And my 9th mistake would be making too much of an emotional decision. While home buying can be very emotional, first of all, it can be exciting, a little bit anxiety inducing, stressful, just a whole mix of emotions. It's really important to go into the home buying process with a more logical way of thinking. It's easy to fall in love with a beautiful home that has the most beautiful staging, but it's important to focus more on the structural integrity, functionality, long-term value, and convenience for each property, depending on your lifestyle, your goals, the reason you're buying, etc. So here's a pro tip. Bring a checklist to every showing that you go on. That way you can have your needs and wants list in front of you at every showing, and you can have your objective needs on one side, and that way you're very focused on your priorities. It's good to have some priorities that you would ideally want in a perfect world, but once again, it's important to focus on your priorities, and having this in front of you at every showing will be really helpful. And lastly on the list would be overlooking assistance programs. If you're a first-time home buyer, I'm sure you've heard of some kind of home buying assistance program. Definitely make sure to weigh all of your options when you're applying for your approval. I know I've probably repeated that word over and over again, but when you're talking to a lender, make sure you ask them about any assistance programs that they offer. Obviously, you'd have to qualify for them, but even if you don't, when you do get pre-approved, they'll give you a better understanding of what you would need to qualify if possible. That way, if you're not quite ready to buy a home, you know what you need and you can better prepare yourself for when the time does come to make that purchase. So talk to your lender, talk to your agent about programs, because this can save you thousands, or at least help out quite significantly. And other than assistance programs, don't overlook the power of negotiating. While you don't ever want to offend sellers with really low ball offers, you can definitely find comps in your area with your agent to make sure that you submit a reasonable offer and still try to find some unique opportunities where you can at least negotiate it a little bit where everyone walks away happy. And if you're buying new, currently you can find a lot of incentives with some new communities. So if you have a great assistance program, great agent on your team, maybe you're buying new with some incentives, you can really save thousands. So once again, buying a home in Dallas or just anywhere is a huge milestone, but avoiding a lot of these mistakes can save you a lot of money, and it can really just help the process be a lot smoother. So now you've watched the video, you might be thinking to yourself, I mean, okay, what does it actually cost to live in Dallas and not just buy property here? If you're thinking that, make sure you watch this video here. And if you're wanting to know what reasons I would give you as to why Dallas might not be a good fit for you, make sure to watch this video here.